Hi, Joanne.
Hey.
Going?
I'm good. How are you? Sorry, I just cut out partially there. I'm good. You? I'm gonna work out whether to go sideways or am I sideways? I think I'm sideways now.
Yeah, you're sideways to me.
Fine.
All right. And someone else is here as well. Alison?
Yeah, hi.
Hi, how you going?
Yeah, good, thanks.
So I'll just change. There we go. So thanks for coming, Joanne and Alison. What we intend to do with these Q&As is come with a plant tip or like a bit of a brief lesson, and then an info sheet, like a one-page info sheet to share each Q&A. We're going to do that this week, but because of the lockdown, we've kind of been flat out trying to keep things going smoothly, with the limitations that we've got. So forgive me for not coming with one of those this session, but from next Q&A, we'll be doing that. But this one will be recorded and uploaded as well. So anything that we discuss today or talk about today will be up on the ecosystem portal for anyone's future reference.
Behave ourselves then.
Yep, that's right. Yeah, no swearing, no. Yeah, you can't talk bad about particular plants. They take it personally. So, was there anything that Alison, you or Joanne, any questions that you had or anything that you would like to share this time around?
Alison, you're welcome to go first. I usually go first on these things, and I've had a lot of Patrick's time, so please knock yourself out.
That's what these are
This
for.
is my first session. I've usually caught up with work, so it was good to be able to pop in. And I'm into indoor plants, but I haven't. I mean, I've just interested in the propagating too with the tank, and just any tips around that.
Yep. Yeah. Do you have the farm wall ecosystem with the?
Yeah.
And have you got the black acrylic lid with the holes?
Yeah, I just got that the other week, actually. Yeah.
Brilliant. So, in terms of propagating plants, there's a video that we'll be publishing hopefully early next week, which is basically a short 2-minute tutorial on both using it to grow microgreens, but also propagating plants. And then there's also, as of today, if you're on Instagram, there's a story that Farmwall has just shared on Instagram, which shows myself propagating some plants using the ecosystem at home. Having said all that, we can talk about it right now and go through that 2-minute tutorial process anyway, if you'd like. I'm not sure. Maybe I'll move the computer a bit so you've got a bit more of a close-up. So yeah, as you can see on this side, there's the microgreens, and then on this side, we've got a few microgreens in pots over there, but also plants propagating. And I'll pull one out to show you. The one that I'm pulling out is a spider plant. It's Chlorophytum comosum. It's a really, really common plant. So probably a couple of weeks ago now, this one was taken off of another plant and placed in here, and that's the progress in the roots. In terms of what to do, it's really as simple as taking your cutting and putting it into the clay balls. What I like to do is take about half of the clay balls out, or fill it halfway, and then place the cutting or the cut stem in there so that either the cut end of the stem, if it's a plant with a stem, or the base of the plant or the roots are reaching about halfway down, and then fill it up to the top with clay balls to support the plant, so it sits there like that. The one thing to keep in mind is where the water is going to be. You want either the plant or the stem or the roots to be just touching the water. When these are in your fish tank, the water level should be to about here. So
Yeah.
just above the base of the clay pots. It's okay if it's a little bit lower, okay if it's a little bit higher. Whatever level it is, it'll wick up to just below the top using those clay balls, which is why it's good to have the plant cutting or stem sitting about halfway down the pot, because the water level will come up to about here, and then they'll be contacted by the water, and that contact is what triggers new root growth in most plants. In fact, almost all plants that you can propagate from cuttings, that's the case. They just need to be touching water. So that's
And
it.
with these
Then
clay balls, do you reuse them, or like you need fresh ones each time you do it?
I reuse mine. I think after a while they can get a bit, a bit old and gross, so to speak, because sometimes some root material will attach to them, or in the water there may be a little bit of rotting of that root material of the stem, and that can stick to the balls. What I like to do if I'm, taking one cutting out to plant in soil and then doing a new one, I just grab the balls in my hand or put them in a strainer and just run them under the tap for a bit. And if they're really gross, then I throw them out and I use some new ones. So that's another example of one. That's another one which I think was originally placed probably about just above halfway down, and since then its roots have grown enough that it's actually moved its way up a bit. That one, if this were to be, propagated for the sake of growing it in soil, this one would probably be well past the time to do that. If you see the roots coming out of the bottom of the clay pot, it's time to put it in soil. Unless you want to leave it in the tank because it looks nice, and it'll keep feeding off of that tank water and cleaning that tank water. It's okay to leave them, which is what we're doing here. But yeah, if all you need is a little bit of new root from that water, and if you see it coming out of the bottom, then it's time to give it a pot. Yeah, so that's it. In terms of cutting the plants, Alison, have you done any plant propagation before?
Yeah, I have. Quite a few. Just a lot of the ones just in water. Quite a few. I forgot the names of the plants. But I have done quite a few.
That's all right. Yeah, so I was just asking to check if you're across, where on the plant to cut, and to know that there's roots and stuff like that. I can actually grab a cutting that we have just out of view of the camera of a climbing plant, and we can talk about that briefly. Maybe, Alison and Joanne, we might all be on the same page about this, but because this is recorded, it might be a handy lesson for anyone that watches it in the future. So I'll go off camera for 2 seconds and get a cutting, and I'll be back.
What plant?
It's a mess plant.
Yeah.
So I've got a couple here. What we're doing here in the farm wall space is propagating quite a few cuttings hydroponically. So I've just pulled these out of our propagation system. This one here is a Monstera a Swiss cheese plant. I'm guessing you would have seen it before. It's a really cool indoor plant. And you can see it's been cut to propagate. That root there, that black root that you can see, is all new growth from since it was put in water about 2 weeks ago. If I pulled it out and saw it at this length or even a bit shorter, I would know it's time for it to go in the pot. The only reason this one isn't is because of the lockdown. So basically, if you're chopping a plant like this or another climbing plant like devil's ivy or any of the other monsteras that are climbing or hanging or trailing, then all you would do is take the leaf with about 1 centimeter of stem on either side it's more important to have the stem that is below the leaf node, so closer to the start of the plant, because the roots that are behind the leaf or before it, they're the ones that serve that leaf. So in this cutting, it's okay to have that stem bit there, which was above the leaf or further down the length of the trailing vine, but it's not actually going to help the cutting in any way. The reason to leave a little bit is because new growth in most of these plants comes out of where the leaf joins the stem. If you look closely, you can see the little bright green tip surrounded by some brown stuff that's emerging from that join between the leaf and the stem. So I usually leave a little bit of stem just to be sure that that has enough room to come out, and that when I snip it, I'm not actually snipping that new growth node. So that's it. And then in this case, a lot of the material has gone a bit brown. For example, a lot of this root material, that's actually the flesh of the root slowly rotting away. That's okay. The plant will gradually shed off outer layers, and then they'll die and start rotting in the water. And if you're ever pulling out cuttings to inspect them or have a look and you see some of that, you can just brush it off or pull it off with your fingers, or even run the cutting underwater just to get some of that gunky stuff off, and then put it back in the water. So yeah, that's an example of one of them. The other one I've got is very similar. It's the devil's ivy. So just a variegated devil's ivy. Same with that cutting. I left some stem from below the leaf, and roots have emerged from there. And then you can see there's just a tiny bit of stem left above the leaf. And there's even a new growth tip. Again, might be hard to see on this Zoom call, but it's just that little green spiky bit coming out where the leaf joins the stem. Yeah. So in the future, we'll actually have a tutorial video on how to take plant cuttings, and we'll do it with a few different plants, because not all of them are like this. Some plants you can do from leaf cuttings, and then succulents and cacti are a whole other story entirely. Others you can cut a section of the plant off, or you can propagate by division for plants that divide below the soil. You pull them out and split them up. So in the future, the content the farm will be producing will hopefully include some tutorials and information about that. Yeah, there's a couple of the two plants that are in this one, which I think are the most gorgeous. I guess they're hard to see with how bright that light is. They're allocations. There's one there and then one at the back here. They're a great plant to just leave in the tank. They look really nice. They're really green, kind of juicy looking. And they've got those big lobed leaves, which kind of look like some of the bigger allocations that people have indoors. They're really nice and tropical. And yeah, they're one of my favorite plants.
What's that plant called, did you say?
Alocasia, Alocasia. That's the genus. So there's probably hundreds of different kinds. I can't actually say what exact species that one is or cultivar, but yeah, Alocasia. They're really popular for indoor plants because they come from tropical countries, often in shaded areas, and they live, on the forest floor and only grow to, I guess the biggest ones would be, well, the really biggest ones grow to be 2 or 3 meters tall, but those are like the super giants of the genus. A lot of them are just little plants like these ones that grow maybe 10, 20, 30 centimeters. And yeah, they do okay in low light, and they're not super sensitive, which is why they're a popular indoor plant.
Nice.
So I've been out in our garden cutting one.
Oh yeah, that looks
I
like
know.
Raschula.
Nice one, what the fuck?
Yeah.
But I looked it up a few weeks ago on the internet, and they said cut it and then leave it on the window or leave it in a warm place.
Yep.
Weeks until it sort of got the ends.
Yep.
And now am I ready to put it in some soil?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that plant's called Crassula ovata. and it's commonly known as a Chinese money plant or a jade plant.
Oh yeah, I think that's what it was. Yeah.
And yeah, they're a woody stemmed succulent. So that's exactly it. It's the usual way of propagating succulents. You snap them off or cut them off and you let them grow that callus and then place it in soil, or you could put it in water and let it develop roots from this point. It's not necessary. It's what I've done in the past with my crassulus. But yeah, the stage that you're at now, you could just stick that stem into soil and would you be able to hold it up again? I'd just like to see how much of that stem there is. What might be a good idea is the first two branches or leaves, so to speak. It might be a good idea to actually snap them off. The roots will likely emerge from the joins between those stem sections. Yeah, and even
I've got one here. Oh, that's a bit smaller.
yeah, that's a bit better. So roots will emerge from all the way up that stem. And I often like to have a little bit longer so more roots can come out, but also to support the plant better. So in that case, perhaps, yeah, that branch you've got your fingers on, it might even be a good idea to snap that. And that one you've snapped off, you could propagate that as well. You could stick it in soil or stick it in water. And there's a good chance that'll take as well.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
I can
And
just. And how far down do I put it in? Up to sort of there's sections here, up to here, maybe.
yeah, I would say those first two sections under the soil.
Straight into soil. Okay. Super.
The roots in Crashula ovata, the roots will often grow out of those joins between the sections.
Okay.
So having two below the surface would be a good idea.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
And-
That one's looking good. It's looking a little bit yellow.
Yep.
Like I wasn't
Yeah.
sure what the problem.
That's probably because it's been off the plant for a little while.
Right.
They do
Yeah.
need a lot of water. They're a bit different to other succulents in that they can be in regular potting mix. They don't have to be in a cactus or a succulent mix.
Oh, that's good to know.
And they can
some-
take a little bit more water in the soil than other succulents. It's one of the reasons they're quite popular in Melbourne in people's front and backyards is because they do okay even in a really wet, soggy winter. Whereas most other succulents and cacti would be likely to develop root rot if they're sitting in that much water all the time.
Right. Yeah. I'm still navigating the world of succulents and knowing which ones are precious and which ones are not.
Yeah, it's hard because there's also about, thousands and thousands of different kinds.
Mm.
So, yeah. Thanks for sharing that. Crassulas like that, they were the first, not the first ones I propagated, but pretty early on when I was starting to get into indoor plants for the first time. A friend of mine had a housemate with a really big one, and I asked if I could snap a few branches off to try and propagate them in water. I think it was probably the third plant I ever propagated. And yeah, another thing to know about them is if their leaves get a little bit, soft or floppy, it's likely because they don't have enough water. If they get a bit yellow, again, because they won't have enough water or nutrients. And at the opposite end of the spectrum, they can actually get so full that they might split.
Oh, wow.
So if they have heaps and heaps of water, but then a few really sunny days, all that water's gone up into the leaves. This is the case for many other succulents as well. All that water has gone up into the leaves. They're holding their maximum amount of moisture. And then there could be a very sunny, hot day the next day, and that expands all that fluid in the leaf before the plant can actually send it back down, and it'll cause the leaves to split or crack or rupture. It's kind of like how tomatoes do that as well. In summer, if tomatoes have a huge amount of water or a big rain and then a really hot day, they'll actually split.
Mm.
Yeah.
So can I stick this in the tank now for a few days until I get some soil, or?
I think so, yeah. I think that would be the right thing to do.
Yep. Okay.
Yeah.
Got a few things.
The reason I say I think so is because I haven't done it and I haven't seen anyone put them in the tank before. Any plant that I'm yet to see in the tank, I say probably, because I know they do okay in water, but we might be surprised in the future. Maybe there's some plants that don't take that fish water too well, but
Oh, look,
Crashula ovata is quite hardy. I think they'll be okay.
we've got quite a big plant in the garden, so if this one fails, to start again.
Excellent. That's good.
Have
Yeah.
you been out to the succulent garden in the Botanic Gardens?
For a long time,
Beautiful.
not for a long time. Probably should go actually. Maybe I can snap off a few.
Yeah, it's incredible. It's so beautiful. Mm.
Are you in New South Wales as well, Alison?
Oh no, I'm talking about Melbourne. You know, and then you are you both in New South Wales?
I'm in Melbourne. Joanne's in New South Wales.
Okay.
Yeah. So to answer your question, I have been there.
Yeah, the Guilfoyle.
Guildford, it is incredible. I actually can't believe that I hadn't heard of it before, because it's almost like a natural wonder in the middle of the city,
It's amazing. Yeah.
or a man-made wonder, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah. If
It's
you,
just interesting the story behind it in terms of that collector in, where was he? Castlemaine or somewhere.
yeah.
Mm.
So I don't know about the history of the plants that have made it there, but I know that when the Botanic Gardens were started, they suddenly realized that this is 150 years ago, that the access to water wasn't as good as it needed to be. And so they created that volcano basically as a giant water reservoir to,
Yeah.
to serve the plants, the gardens in summer, I guess. And there's a new cacti and succulent, a new arid garden, which is just opened up, I think 2 or 3 months ago. And that was a collector who, someone who spent their entire life collecting succulents and cacti from all around the world. And they were up in Bendigo or Ballarat, I think, and then
that area, yeah.
and then passed away, and then their family inherited this collection of succulents, cacti, and agaves, which they soon learned was world class. And I'm unsure if they donated it or sold it to the gardens, but either way, it's been put in there now.
Yeah.
Another thing, which is quite amazing. Yeah. Joan and Alison, have either of you planted or gardened with agaves before?
No, I don't think so.
Okay.
They're one of my favorites, although I've only got 2 of them because they're not really an indoor plant, and I live in an apartment at the moment.
Yeah.
There's some really common ones out there that you'll see in many front yards, like foxtail agave, which is Agave attenuata.
Yeah.
They're an amazing plant, and it depends on the species, but they take between 10 and 90 years to flower. And when they do, it's incredible. And one of the most incredible things about the plants at Guilfoyle's volcano, I find, is those agaves that they've had there that have now flowered, and they've left those flower spikes there. And the spikes are, 10 or 15 meters in the air from an agave plant, which is about that big in diameter on the ground. Yeah. I realize I'm going on and on now, but yeah. Was there anything else, any other questions about indoor plants or indoor growing, or perhaps what you need to do as we go into winter in terms of care and watering and fertilizer that you guys would like to talk about?
No, I don't think so. But we'll have to think about it for next time. I just keep dumping in the fish water and everything seems to be very happy.
Yeah. It's definitely, full of nutrients and everything they love. And also it's a nice temperature. It's the difference between that and propagating things in a glass of water is the fish tank water stays at a really consistent 24 to 26 degrees. So.
Yeah, well, my big lesson recently, and I did post it on the forum, was I bought some mung beans from one of those sort of, what do you call them, like pay and weigh places. And they were rubbish compared to the stuff that you provide. They were inconsistent sprouting. They're small. They seem to take ages to soak. They seem to be much more dried out. So
yeah, I'm sorry to hear that, but I'm glad to hear that ours are.
No, they're great. I did some microgreens from the mung. Thought I'd give those a go because the mung beans are delicious sprouted. But as microgreens, I thought I'd give them a go. And look, they were fine, but they just didn't give enough, didn't give as much of a crop as I've got from other sort of beans, similar beans.
Yeah. Yeah, that's fair enough. I
And
suspect.
Joanne, are you doing the hydroponic as well as the aquaponic, or?
My hydroponic has been going for about 3 months. Like I basically use those Woolworths greens, those little pots, and I planted some of those. And when they were long enough, I put them into the hydroponics, and they have been for probably about 2 or 3 months. And I keep thinking, this is it. You know, it's time to change the water, but they still keep going. So there's obviously more nutrients there, and they're super happy. And I've got lettuce, and I've got spinach. Spinach is better because it doesn't create this kind of long stalk. The lettuce kind of goes upwards and sprouts, so it's starting to get a bit long, whereas the spinach just seems to come out the bottom. It's really good.
That's great. That's really. I'm glad to hear that it's all going very well. Well, I suspect that perhaps the biggest difference between the beans you got from the Payan Way and the ones that you can get from us and Sprout at home is the time involved in transporting them from wherever they're grown, probably miles and miles and miles away, to get to the supermarket. I don't know much about grocery store supply chains, but I would have to guess that there's at least a day between their growing situation and then getting to the shelf, and in that time they're possibly frozen or kept really cold in a truck and becoming quite dehydrated. So
Yeah, I don't know. Who knows how long they've sat in one of those bins, kind of waiting to be moved out.
Yeah.
But I'd give it a go, because part of it is I'm conscious of, the air miles associated with the postage as well.
Yeah.
So if I here, it's a bit better. Kind of shipping from Melbourne.
Yeah.
And they've shipped it, I guess, themselves as well from. It's all right, but keep me busy. I'll put the kilo of it. So.
Yeah.
Love peas.
Excellent. Excellent.
You started the hydroponics thing yet, Alison?
No, just the aquaponics. So yeah, no, I haven't haven't set up the other system yet. I should do though.
Well, probably you want to start. I'm not the expert. This is just my experience. You probably want to start sort of sprouting some of them. Like I sprouted them separately. Not sprouted them, but started off the growing phase separately. I don't know. Can you actually start off the growing phase in the aquaponic system amongst the clay balls? Is that possible, Patrick?
To then transfer to the hydroponic system.
Well, no. Can you start it in the hydroponic system? I suppose you need to keep it wet. So how do you keep it wet in order to get it sort of sprout?
Yeah, I've done that before, but so from the hydroponic system to the aquaponic system, I have done before, but the reverse you wouldn't want to do, because the hydroponic system ideally is kept completely free of bacteria.
Hydroponic system. Can you just way that you can sort of start them off? I got some of that hemp cubes.
Yep.
Can I plant a seed in there? Then how do I keep that wet?
Yep.
I don't know. Do I keep that under, below the water level? So it's
the water level in the hydroponic system can be kept to just above the bottom of that cube or that lump of rock wool or whatever it is, hemp that you have. And then that water will continually wick up. The seed is at the top of the hemp block.
Yeah, send it to her.
That hemp block is just touching the surface of the water. The water will wick up to the top and keep that seed wet.
Okay, so I can just start it off there rather than having to start it off separately.
Yes, you could, yeah.
All right, I still got heaps of those little soil cube things. I think that you sent, and from Woolworths as well. And Gert made sure I knew that they needed fertilizer, because there's no kind of nutrition in them with tank water.
Yeah, it can definitely be done, but the one thing is it's a one-way system. You can move things from the hydroponics to the aquaponics, but you wouldn't want anything that's been in the aquaponics to then contact the hydroponic system because of all the bacteria that it would bring with it, which is good in the aquaponic system. That's what we want, but you want the hydroponic system to be
Okay,
bacteria free.
cool.
Yeah.
Okay. I've got to run, but thank you again. Awesome advice.
Thanks for joining us.
Yeah, no, I might head off too, but thanks for your time.
Yeah,
Thank
thank you guys. We appreciate, even though sometimes these Zoom calls are small, just 2 or 3 of us. So it's
Yeah.
what excites us the most is being able to share knowledge and keep everyone on track in terms of growing things in their homes. So
Yeah, no,
Absolutely.
great.
and yeah, any other Friday when you can show up, that would be fantastic.
Excellent.
In the future,
Thank
we'll
you.
definitely be sharing more formal lessons and knowledge.
Yeah. Well, everybody take care. They're down in Melbourne, and we're thinking of you when we're out at our restaurants.
Cheers. Hopefully it'll end
Yeah.
in a few days until we're out of
Hope-
this.
Yeah, cool.
Hope- Thanks. See you later.
Cheers,
Yeah.
Alison. Cheers, man. See you later.
Bye.